Welcome back, truth seekers, explorers of the cosmic weird, and fellow stargazers. You're tuned in to the Dead Minds podcast, and I am your host, Nathan Scott. Tonight, we're digging into a hearing that, mark my words, people will look back on decades from now as one of those watershed moments. The House Committee on Oversight gathered for 2.5 hours. They grilled witnesses about UFOs. Or as they're now called, UAPs. But this wasn't just flying saucer talk. This was testimony about nuclear bases being buzzed by glowing squares, Tic-Tac craft rising from the ocean, Russian missile silos almost launching, and American whistleblowers having their lives destroyed just for speaking up. 2.5 hours of material, dozens of explosive statements, bipartisan unity in a Congress that can barely agree on lunch, and the sense that something is cracking open. So tonight, we'll walk through it all, the witnesses, the questions, the revelations, and the bigger implications. So, buckle your asses in, because this isn't light UFO fluff. This is hard testimony under oath about what's happening in our skies, under our seas, and behind the locked doors of government programs. Chairwoman Anna Paulina Luna set the tone from the jump. This is not science fiction. This is about national security, government accountability, and the American people's right to the truth. That's an elected official saying, "This is real, it matters, and the cover-up can't stand." She referenced whistleblowers from Eglin Air Force Base, where multiple pilots came forward alleging the Air Force was hiding UAP encounters. But those pilots stayed anonymous. And why? Because, as Luna put it, they feared losing flight status. Imagine being one of the best-trained observers on Earth, trusted to fly a $100 million jet, but you can't report what you've seen because it might cost you your career. Congress blasted the Pentagon's UAP office, AARO, calling it a graveyard for reports. Former Director Sean Kirkpatrick was even labeled a documented liar in the hearing. And Chris Mellon veteran Intel insider said one of AARO's official reports was the most error-ridden and unsatisfactory government report he'd ever seen. So before a single witness spoke, the stage was clear. The Pentagon has been burying the truth. Congress is pissed. Whistleblowers are scared, and the American people have been lied to. Let's start with Jeffrey Elli and the Vandenberg encounters. Elli is no UFO hobbyist. He's a career Air Force military police officer with 16 years of service. His job was to secure the bases where America launches its most important missiles, and he testified about multiple incidents between 2003 and 2005. Now that would sound like pure science fiction if they weren't in the Congressional record. October 14th, 2003. The Red Square. Boeing contractors working at Vandenberg reported a massive glowing red square silently hovering over 2 missile defense sites. It was not a vague light in the sky, but a geometric structured shape. After several minutes, it drifted east and vanished over the hills. Elli confirmed this is documented in Air Force and FBI files. Later that night, security forces saw a fast-moving object over the ocean. Elli responded to their calls. Over the radio, men screamed, "It's coming right at us. It's right here." 5 shaken witnesses described a triangular craft larger than a football field hovering silently before accelerating away at impossible speed. A week later, another patrol declared an emergency when a light descended over the ocean and then landed or hovered on the flight line. It then vanished. Afterwards, those witnesses were intimidated, told to keep quiet and think carefully about what they were reporting. 2005, Elli's personal encounter. Off-duty in his backyard with 2 fellow officers. They saw a light behaving strangely. Then a 30-foot glowing sphere dropped to 200 feet above his house, pulsed, and then accelerated into the stars. Elli's plea to Congress was powerful. provide funding for serious UAP research, end the overclassification that buries these reports, protect whistleblowers so more witnesses can step forward. He said bluntly, "The question is no longer whether these events are real, but whether we have the courage to face them." For context, remember, Vandenberg is home to our missile defense shield. If unknown objects are playing cat and mouse with that system, the implications are staggering. Our next witness was Chief Alexandro Wiggins, and he spoke about the USS Jackson and the Tic-Tac UFOs. Senior Chief Wiggins is a Navy operations specialist. He wasn't talking about something he saw in 1980 or secondhand reports. His encounter happened February 15th, 2023, barely a year and a half before this hearing. At 7:15 p.m., on board the USS Jackson in the Whiskey 291 warning area off Southern California, Wiggins observed a self-luminous tic-tac object emerge from the ocean, then link up with 3 similar craft. The 4 vanished simultaneously, accelerating at impossible speeds. He emphasized 3 key points. Safety. Unknown craft maneuvering near U.S. Navy ships is a direct hazard. Reporting without stigma. Sailors need to know they can file reports without ending their careers. Declassification, releasing metadata and technical summaries would build public trust and allow independent scientific review. Wiggins stressed this wasn't just "I saw a weird light." These were multi-sensor detections recorded in the ship's interior systems, timestamps, overlays, data, and yet no debrief, no follow-up. He closed by saying, "Help us capture, protect, fairly evaluate the evidence, and provide a safe pathway for those in uniform to report it." The echoes of the 2004 Nimitz Tic-Tac encounter were undeniable, but this was new, direct, and on record. Next, we heard from George Knapp, the journalist with the Soviet files. George Knapp is UFO royalty. He broke Bob Lazar's story, he's won Peabody and Murrow awards, and he's been following this thread for nearly 40 years. But in this hearing, he wasn't there as a TV personality. He came armed with a shitload of documents. Knapp laid out the story of Thread 3, the Soviet Union's massive UFO study. After years of ridicule in the 1980s, the USSR ordered every unit to report strange aerial phenomena. Thousands of reports poured in. The Ministry of Defense and KGB analyzed them, trying to reverse engineer what they were seeing. Knapp described meeting Colonel Boris Sokolov, who confirmed that the Soviets' goal was to develop technology superior to anything the U.S. had based on UFO observations. Then came the chilling October 1982 incident. UFOs hovered over a Soviet ICBM base. Launch codes entered themselves, the missiles armed. For several minutes, the Soviets had no control of their nuclear arsenal aimed at the United States. Then, as suddenly as it began, the UFOs vanished and the systems returned to normal. Knapp's testimony hit hard. If UFOs can mess with our nukes and our adversaries' nukes, that means we're dealing with something that transcends borders. He also confirmed reports that Lockheed Martin and other contractors have held exotic materials, possibly crash retrievals, shielded from FOIA by being in private hands. Robert Bigelow even attempted to acquire some of this material. Congress pressed him on names, and Knapp said, Lockheed Martin and the usual suspects. Think about that. If true, the deepest UFO secrets may not be in government vaults at all, but in corporate hangars, completely unaccountable to Congress or the public. Next, we heard from Dylan Borland and the triangle at Langley. Borland served as a geospatial intelligence analyst. His job was analyzing aerial imagery for the Air Force. He described an encounter in 2012 at Langley Air Force Base that reads like a scene from the movie Arrival. At 1:30 a.m., he saw a light rise near a NASA hangar. Then a 100-foot equilateral triangle materialized around it. The craft was thick, 1 to 2 stories tall, with 4 lights, 1 on each corner and 1 in the center. The surface, not just metal. Borland said it looked like black metallic flake paint, but with a lava-like plasma fluid flowing over it, shimmering like the images from the James Webb Space Telescope. It hovered silently above him. His phone overheated and shut down. Then the center light flashed and it shot skyward to jet altitude in seconds. No sound, no wind displacement. Borland later learned about classified crash retrieval programs. He testified that colleagues in the intelligence community live in fear. They're harassed, blacklisted, and stripped of clearances. He himself has been denied jobs, faced phishing attacks, and watched his career collapse. His closing warning, the future of humanity is one in which we either travel to the stars or regress to the Stone Age. The time to act is now. The final testimony came from Joe Spielberger, policy counsel at the Project on Government Oversight. He reminded Congress that whistleblowers from the Pentagon Papers to Watergate are often the only way the truth gets out, but they're punished, often savagely, careers destroyed, retaliation through lawsuits, investigations, and leaks of private information. He stressed that whistleblowers are patriots, and bipartisan laws have historically protected them. But today, UAP whistleblowers are being left out in the cold. His bottom line, if we want transparency, we must guarantee protection. Otherwise, silence wins, secrecy deepens, and democracy rots. The questioning period ran hot. Highlights included destroyed records. Elli confirmed that Air Force police records tied to Vandenberg incidents had been destroyed on a 3-year purge cycle. Lawmakers called this real-time data loss and blasted the Air Force for erasing potential history. Moskowitz bluntly said, "I don't know what's true, but I know when we're being lied to, and we are definitely being lied to." Crash retrieval programs. Borland was asked if the Langley craft was U.S. technology. His answer, not foreign. The answer is with arrow. Translation, there are programs in the shadows that Congress itself isn't read into. Psyops? Representative Nancy Mace asked Knapp if some of this was psyops. Knapp admitted it's possible, but pointed out governments have historically used UFOs both as cover for secret projects and as misdirection. Private contractors. Knapp reiterated that Lockheed Martin and others have exotic material shielded from oversight. Intimidation. Borland admitted whistleblowers face phishing attempts, clearance manipulation, and even threats of espionage charges which are punishable by death. Bipartisanship. Both Democrats and Republicans agreed whistleblowers must be protected, secrecy must end, and transparency is overdue. So why does this hearing matter? National security. Unknown craft are appearing near our most sensitive installations, nuclear silos, missile defense sites, and Navy ships. If these are foreign, it's a direct threat. If not, it's even stranger. Science. These phenomena defy our understanding of physics. If studied openly, they could unlock propulsion, energy, or even consciousness breakthroughs. Democracy. If programs exist that Congress itself cannot access, we're living in a shadow government. That's not conspiracy talk. That's what senators like Gillibrand and Schumer are saying on record. The future. Whistleblowers say we're at a crossroads. Either we embrace transparency and advance, or secrecy and intimidation drag us backward. This wasn't disclosure with a capital D, but it was disclosure with a lowercase d. It put Tic-Tacs, red squares, plasma skin triangles, and Soviet missile malfunctions on the Congressional record. The witnesses weren't fringe. They were veterans, journalists, policy experts, and Congress listened. Maybe, just maybe, this is the crack in the dam, and when history looks back, it may say, the first real step toward truth wasn't a UFO landing on the White House lawn. It was a group of whistleblowers under oath, daring to speak in the people's house. All right, folks, that's where we're going to land this bad boy. 2.5 hours of Congress doing what so many of us have been screaming about for decades, admitting that the government isn't telling the whole truth about what's in our skies, under our seas, and maybe even in our hangars. Here's my take, and I'll be blunt. We've now got decorated veterans, Navy chiefs, journalists with hard documents, and intelligence specialists all saying the same thing. The evidence is there. The cover-up is real. And yet the system is designed to grind whistleblowers into the dirt so that the machine keeps running. And that's what burns my ass up. Because if you're willing to put your life on the line for your country, you shouldn't have to fight your own government just to tell the fucking truth. If they can silence them, they can silence anyone. Now, I know some of you are probably thinking, is this aliens? Is this black budget tech? Or is this just Cold War psyops dressed up in shiny lights? And my answer is this: I don't friggin' know, and that's the point. We're not being told. That's what makes this a crisis of democracy just as much as a mystery of physics. My gut tells me we're standing at the edge of something big, whether that's disclosure, new tech, or just another round of bureaucratic stonewalling. Hell, I don't know, but you can feel it, can't you? The walls are cracking. So here's the takeaway I want you to leave with tonight. The truth doesn't just fall into your lap. It's dragged out piece by piece by people brave enough to risk everything. That's why protecting whistleblowers matters and why we keep the pressure on. So, until next time, my friends, stay curious, stay critical, and never stop looking up. Now go find me a unicorn,